They were fighting all the time. They weren't listening, and they were having many outbursts. The gains that my son, who's recently been diagnosed with ADHD and possible autism, had made in preschool were slowly fading. He was having many more outbursts, and they were not the same children, and couldn't see their friends. My daughter, who's supposed to be in Miss Moshtog's class, didn't understand why we would come home from work and make her do the paper packets. She didn't understand why she had to do the paper packets if they already learned it. I'm going to skip a bit. At the end of 8 weeks, my husband and I weighed the pros and the cons and made the tough decision to send our kids back to Club for Youth. There they would be around 50 to 80 children every day, but they would eat together, play together, they'd be around new germs, and I was terrified, but I knew that they needed to get the interaction. The pros of the club seemed to outweigh the cons, and I'm going to tell you that we made the right choice. My kids are happier and healthier. With the start date of school is quickly approaching, I'm scared to think that my son will start his kindergarten year in front of a computer. I'm not able to keep him home, so he'll be around the same children. He will still have adults watching him, but instead of hands-on wonderful learning that is provided by the Wallapai teachers, he will be sitting in front of a computer, and all of the benefits of online school will not be afforded to him because my husband and I have to go to work. Online learning doesn't work for everyone. Virtual classes don't work for everyone, and I believe that my daughter is supposed to be in second grade accelerated, but with online, I don't feel like that's going to be a good option for her. I want to impress upon you that I am worried, so this is not a letter that I'm writing frivolously or without education on the matter. I know that an outbreak could happen at any time, and I believe that we can put processes into play that will lower the chances of this. Classes, they can wash their hands, sanitizing when soap and water isn't an option. Classes can eat together and have recess together. And if you look at the Mojave County numbers, I know that they're scary. 100 new cases in a day seems like a lot, but if you look at the Kingman numbers, they are not that bad. We continue to have the least amount in the county each day. I don't know many of you on the board personally, but I assure you that I'm a responsible parent who wants what's best for her children. I work at the hospital. I'm well aware of what's really happening. I do not base my plea to you based on Facebook facts or conspiracy theories. And least of all, I do not base my plea on fear. I base my plea to you on the numbers that I see daily sent by the hospital and reported by the county public, and as a parent who wants what's best for her children. I base it on the fact that my children need teachers like Mrs. Kilby, Mrs. Moshtog, and Ms. Plante to guide them to be the best that they can be, and I base it on the fact that online children will not work for my family due to working. I base it on the fact that my children have gone to daycare during this entire pandemic, and they are happy and they are healthy and they are better for it. I base it on the fact that Little Minnows Learning Center has been open during the pandemic, taking care of the children whose parents are actively working with COVID-19 patients daily, and all the children and staff have stayed healthy. I know that there are a lot of parents looking into other options. They're planning on using micro schools and established schools. I would prefer to keep my children in the Kingman Unified School District with educators who have taught my friends and my friends' children over the years. I prefer to keep them with children with educators who are invested in Kingman as I am. COVID-19 is scary because we don't know much about it, but we cannot live our lives in fear. We have the tools, masks, hand washing, social distancing when possible. Let's put these in place and get our children where they need to be in the classroom learning. Thank you. I'm very nervous, so I'll try not to stutter. Much like most of the letters you're going to read today, I'm here to talk about how it's really important that my children be in a classroom. When we look at Kingman numbers, I just hope that the board will look at Kingman almost as its own county. We are 60 plus miles away from any other city. We are not Maricopa County. My husband, who is currently, he works for DPS, he's a sergeant now down in Phoenix. If we were down there, I'd have a completely different opinion probably. But when you look at the Kingman numbers daily and what we're showing, and you get with AZDHS, you will see that our positive rate is closer to a 4%. So we meet the guidelines to be back in school if you will consider Kingman as its own entity versus Mojave County. So I'm just asking the board to please look at the total number of tests administered, what the positive rate is for Kingman versus Bullhead or Lake Havasu. And then also the state as a whole is now down to 12.5. But if we could please just look at that instead of the whole county when we make this decision. I am not trying to base this on emotion. It is scary. I would never say that it isn't scary, but I just ask that we please look at facts and stop, bickering back and forth and look at those things. And also when we take into consideration all of our daycares and our club for youth, they've stayed open without major infection. So I think that the Return to Learn guide that you guys have, it's excellent. If we use it, our kids should be afforded the right to be on campus so that families who want to be there can be there. For families that don't feel comfortable, they have an option. And I think that's wonderful. But it feels like families who want to be there aren't even being given the option. And in my situation, with my husband working in Phoenix and me working for the hospital, my children are still going to be in settings like school, but not getting the benefit of school. So I just hope that we please look at the Kingman version considering today. Thank you.
Thank you. And we only have 2 slips. Was there anyone else who was here present that would like to address the board this evening? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and read the letters that the board received in the time frame that I had mentioned.
I can't hear Charlie.
C. The fact that the size of our classrooms is large, average 30 students, starting in person adds to the complexities of keeping proper distance protocols while increasing the risk of infection.
Charlie, I'm going to stop you because we didn't hear that whatever you just started reading. Can you start over?
Took less than a week. We all want to return to our normal business. Factual reality. However, are ill for weeks and in worst case scenarios have passed 150,000 in our country alone. This is harsh, but this is also our truth. Again, why do we start school? Hosted by Dr. Doug Massengill that should sit heavily with us during this time. In the end, it will be impossible to know if we overreacted and did too much, but it will be quite apparent if we underreacted and did too little. Next letter is from Susan Collins. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, administrators, and staff, thank you for your continued commitment to the health and well-being of students and staff in KUSD. We are living in difficult times with no modern precedent for how to proceed forward. The reverence with which you take on the task of formulating plans and making decisions for our district is greatly appreciated. I applaud you for making a difficult decision to start school virtually. I know that this is not what many people wanted, but I do believe it is the most realistic for physical and mental health of adults and students. I'm writing today to ask you to please let the first grading period be entirely online. Teachers have been working tirelessly to prepare for online learning, and there will be many growing pains in the first week or two of the process. I also know that many teachers will take 1 to 2 weeks to teach online procedures and expectations to their students as they integrate core skills into their lessons. This is how we always begin the school year. To ensure continuity of learning and to avoid multiple changes of learning platforms, the decisions need to be made about online versus in-person learning on a quarterly basis. In my opinion, it would be more detrimental to students, parents, and teachers They have to change back and forth between the two than to have a single platform that is assured for the entire grading period. All of these groups need to be able to plan for what is coming next and not be surprised for the last minute. I strongly encourage you to implement virtual learning teaching for the entire first quarter with assurances and plans to inform all stakeholders of plans for the second quarter in a manner that will allow for the arrangement of logistical needs, childcare, supervision of learning, etc. I know that we will continue to provide strong leadership as we navigate these uncharted waters. Thank you, Susan Collins, parent of a Lee Williams student teacher at Manzanita. Should I get someone else to read some of these? Or you want me to keep going? Do you want to read some? Or you don't mind? Do you have a copy of them? Do you have Sandra Stevenson next? Okay. Read me. Oh, gotcha.
So we don't get feedback.
Okay.
Are you ready, President Lucero? I would like to thank Dr. Dorner for being inclusive, keeping our educators and staff informed on a timely basis, and working hard during these trying times. I would also like to thank the board for supporting educators, the students, and their families as best they can during this trying time we are currently living in. I agree that during this time, virtual learning, although not ideal, is the only option that will keep everyone in the community safe. The main reason I write today is when we do eventually return to in-person or live teaching instruction, I'm very concerned with our class sizes. Currently at Wallapai, the first grade rosters are at 28 to 30. While other schools across the district vary in class size, I do not understand how students will be able to safely return to school with those numbers. How will students take mask breaks when at all times we are not following CDC guidelines? Another teacher needs to be hired Wallapai first grade to increase safe return for students. I believe the hiring must happen before school starts to ensure students don't build a relationship with their current teacher only to be changed mid-year when we go to live instruction, since the numbers already too full, especially keeping social and emotional needs met. Many parents I have spoken to in the community say we are ready to return. Once we are ready to return, we'll pull their child from COLA or different homeschool programs to re-enroll their children back into KUSD. How will schools across the district be able to accommodate those vast numbers without the proper steps being taken before we find ourselves in a situation of having 35 plus first graders in one small room and then having to work backwards to try and fix the situation? Let me do the next one as well. Sure. That is Sandra Stevenson of Kingman. As a father of 4 small children, 3 of which are enrolled in KUSD, I respectfully urge the board to avoid allowing the decision of whether to open schools for widespread in-person learning to be motivated by political fever. I ask that the board accept the recommendation of the State Superintendent of Schools and AZDHS and allow in-person learning only when required. The sole purpose of public education is to provide curriculum in a safe learning environment to students. All other goals would be secondary to that. While I agree that in-person learning is optimal, considering the risk to our children and the guidelines set forth by AZDHS and approved by the governor, the safer alternative is virtual classroom. The AZDHS guidelines specify that boards should refrain from full in-person learning until all 3 benchmarks are met at the county level. It stands to reason that the benchmarks triggered at the county level rather than at a city level due to the close contact between the 3 main communities in Mojave and the outlying areas. Those now clamoring to have schools opened up so that they have a place to send their children for the day will be the same people screaming for retribution if their children contact COVID-19 and or other related multi-system inflammatory syndrome in children, MIS-C, which has already attacked children in our community. The risk the children of our community and those close relatives who are considered high risk is not worth the minimal benefit that in-person instruction provides over virtual learning. Having lost one local community member of my extended family to COVID-19 in the last few weeks, I hope you do what is right and make the decision most likely to spare others the same grief by insisting on as much virtual learning as possible in coming months. There is no reason that the Arizona and KUSD in particular cannot stay the course in this fight against COVID-19. Again, I urge the board to follow the AZDHS guidelines and to wait to reopen schools for widespread in-person learning. The politics and comfort of parents, administrators, and even teachers should be secondary to the safety of our children and families. Jeffrey B. Hawes. Let me keep going. Okay. You can see how hard it is to do this in a mask. Currently, Arizona's new metrics for when we can go back to in-school learning have predefined minimum requirements. The one we are currently not meeting is that our overall rate has to be less than 7%. In Mojave County, the number of infected from 0 to 18 was 276. The other columns, even if met, have other requirements that have to also be met. And one of those is there has to be less than 10 per 100,000 people. For our county, we're not even close to that with the school-age children, let alone the adult population. By leaving it up in the air from week to week, we are creating a nightmare because parents truly have no real clue when we would return to in-class learning. By setting a date of October 8th, you help the people who are spreading misinformation that the governor said this or that. We have a 1-week break right before the end of the term, which if the numbers support, allow us time to make a transition that is smooth and seamless. Schools in, I think he's saying Georgia, GA, opened only last week, and already several of them had massive outbreaks of COVID, forcing the schools to shut back down. In Indiana, a middle school the size of ours had a 6th grader that tested positive, and they had now cameras to be able to identify all the students that he had contact with. Out of caution, they had to shut down and force teachers and students that they knew came into contact with him stay home or take COVID testing to show negative. That would not go well for us in a district to have to shut down a school because of something like that. We have to err on the side of caution to protect everyone. Mr. Ron Baer.
Thanks, Dr. Dorner. Hello, Dr. Dorner and School Board. I'm writing today in hopes of providing more support for schools to reopen in-person learning. Number one, Kingman has maintained a low number of COVID-19 cases. Currently, Kingman has had a total of 625 cases, representing 0.2% of the roughly 30,000 residents in Kingman. Number two, our children have been out of a structured learning environment since the second Monday in March, for a total of 90 days as of August 11th. This represents half of a typical school year. The Club for Youth has been open in a full day capacity since schools closed for spring break. We remain with 0 cases out of the 232 members we have served. Dr. Dorner and her team, number 4, Dr. Dorner and her team have done an incredible job of implementing safety standards to help prevent the spread of COVID-19. Number 5, many businesses have remained open and have found ways to restructure to ensure safety measures are in place. Number 6, while online learning is a growing opportunity, it is a very new concept to the majority. Number 7, being social and engaging with your peers is a crucial component in a well-rounded education. Respectfully yours, Board CEO, the Club for Youth. The next letter says, we need to return to live instruction ASAP. If we meet the criteria as per the state, we need to open. It will not matter when we open, cases will increase. And that's of Kingman. The next letter is, as a teacher and parent, I would like the board to consider allowing students to return to the classroom either full-time hybrid model as soon as possible. There are many students, including my own son, who have difficulties learning virtually, and they would like the option to be in a live classroom. KUSD has an online option for those students who do not feel safe to return. For teachers that feel unsafe to return, they should be the first to be considered as an online teacher. If there are not enough online positions available, then the district should work with those individual teachers to come up with a plan that might make them feel safer. With the surveys and the manner in which they were worded, I suspect it is actually fewer teachers than it appears feeling unsafe to return. And speaking with my colleagues, the majority of us feel safe to return live. So in conclusion, I do feel like there is enough of us to deliver instruction in a live setting, whether it be a traditional schedule or a hybrid model. A hybrid model that is easy for us to quickly implement would be an AV model where half of our students come on Monday and Wednesdays and the other half come on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I am confident in myself, my colleagues, especially at White Cliffs Middle School, that we could be ready as soon as given the okay to return live. Dana Cooner from Kingman. The next letter states, our kids need to return to in-person education. Excessive screen time is detrimental to development. Personal relationships need fostering. In addition, you are charged with providing equal educational opportunities to all students. With our demographics, I do not have confidence that you can do that virtually. That is from Courtney Kennedy of Kingman. The next letter, I am writing to ask that you please open our schools on August 17th, not only online, but for in-person learning as well. It is my belief that if you give an option of in-person and online school, that class sizes will be safer for our children and the staff. Honestly, I'm scared. Oh, is that Jamie? I'm sorry. We heard that live already. Thanks, Jamie. Sorry about that. I knew it sounded familiar, but okay. Next letter is, as a teacher, I would like to state my preference to begin in-person learning as soon as possible. If we have met the state guidelines, I think we should transition our students back to school. I feel like parents have the choice of using the KUSD, Kingman Online Learning Academy system, if they do not feel comfortable sending their students to school. The district office has put together a good plan for keeping staff and students safe. Thank you for your consideration, Dina Senslewinsky. You want me to do this last one? Oh, I have the last one. Okay. So I'll read the last letter. Dear KUSD members, I'm writing in response to all the other emails you received about the 2020 school year that has been delayed. I understand tonight the information about how we go forward will be addressed. I have multiple issues as well as other parents. One being that my household is a full-time working household. My husband and I both work Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. Therefore, it makes it really difficult to do any type of online schooling, hence why it was never an option for our house. When I called last month asking what to do, I was told to reach out to the daycare of my children that my children attend to see if they could help out. If you're asking and expecting daycares and other establishments to help with our children's education, then there should be funds given to these establishments who are doing more than their job to help our children out. I can tell you right now, my 5-year-old will not be learning what she should be as if she were in person with her teaching in a classroom. Kindergarten is so hands-on, with or without COVID. These kids need to see it, hear it, be taught. And quite frankly, I'm not that enthusiastic about my 5-year-old being on a computer. We allow screen time at home on weekends for an hour. Now we are going to have screen time all day, whether it is for learning or fun, it is still screen time, and I'm not okay with it. Also, how is it deemed okay with the board that my children can go to a daycare establishment with other children to learn, but cannot go to her actual classroom with her classmates? How is it different? Why is it okay for you to say they can go somewhere, but they cannot go to school? Kids need to go back to school. They need interaction. They need structure. This is their education. It has already started by failing them, having them be behind, causing anxiety, stress, depression, and so many more issues. This needs to be a choice. As a parent, if I'm okay to send my child to school, I should be allowed. If a parent chooses to online homeschool, then that should be allowed. We should not be forced to have this decision made for us. We have been forced to do so much already in this world, and this should not be one of them. We all know the numbers, the information that literally changes every single day about COVID. When will we be able to go back to school? At this point as a parent, I feel defeated. I feel there is no end in sight. My daughter was so excited to start her very first day of school. That got taken away from her. She won't have that picture in front of the doors on her first day of kindergarten like I do when I started at the very same school she is supposed to be attending. She is now scared. She doesn't know who her teacher is, what she looks like, what her classroom is like. I told her she will have to meet her teacher on a computer and do school like that. Her response is, I don't know how, Mom. She asks me every day if she is going to go to kindergarten. I simply don't have an answer for her, and it breaks my heart. I feel I am failing her as a parent. The school system is failing our kids' education. I do not even want to get into the fact that the Zoom and virtual learning is going to be every online pedophile's dream these coming weeks, knowing all these kids are going to be at home and online for school. You can say your system is secure all you want. They can still hack it. They can still pretend they are a kid. They can find out where these kids are and get an address and go there. This is unsafe for so many reasons. Let's get back to school. Let's get back to life. These kids are our future, and they're losing out on so much every minute we waste. Thank you for your time, Amanda Aguilar. So those were all the letters. We know that we appreciate all the letters that were sent. to the board. So if the letter wasn't read or didn't come in the appropriate time frame, we did get all the letters and have read through them. Okay, we will move on to item 5, and first is our superintendent, Dr. Dornell. Okay. Okay. Do we have any board reports from any of the board members? Ms. Shumway, Ms. Weiser, Mrs. Young?
No, no.
No. No. I just wanted to mention in my report that I appreciate everything that the staff has done and the task force. I know that all of you have worked 24/7, and I know, Dr. Dorn, when you signed your contract, we didn't have anything in mind that this would ever happen, but I appreciate all your dedication. I know I've been in the office a lot, just going through the manual, talking to you about decisions that have to be made. So I appreciate your time. But I also wanted to just make aware that whatever is decided tonight, this is going to be a challenge for our district for this year and maybe years to come. And I just wanted the board to think about that. Maybe it's time that we talk about creating some type of position in our district that can deal with COVID-19, whether we call it a health and wellness officer or something who can take the reins, because I don't know how long we can expect the task force to deal with these issues and all the problems that may come after tonight with that. So I just wanted to pass that along with my report, my appreciation, and also if maybe other board members or the staff could start to think about that in the future. Item 6 is the approval of the routine orders of business. So do we have a motion to approve or any questions?
I'll make a motion to approve.
So we have a motion by Mrs. Young. Is that a second, Bruce? Is that okay? A second by Mr. Ricca. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. I don't have Ms. Weiser. Do I have to do something to put her on the screen? Do I have to change the people or something? Oh, okay. Do I click this? Will that? Oh, she's not in there. Okay, maybe she got off. Okay. Okay. Oh, there she is. Maybe she just got off for a second. Beth, are you there?
Yes, finally.
Okay. Did you vote on the consent agenda? I thought you were there. Were you?
No, I wasn't, but my vote is aye.
Okay. So it passed 4-0 consent agenda. Okay. We'll move on to item 7. Okay. So we have books on display. Any questions for Mrs. Woolsey? No questions. Thank you, Ms. Woolsey. Item 8, first reading change in ASBA policy services advisory.
I'm not hearing Jerry.
I can't hear her.
Dr.
Didn't go
Dorn,
on mute.
Ms. Weiser can't hear
So
you.
I'll repeat
They're
myself.
fixing that.
I'm just saying that this is a first reading of IHA Basic Instructional Program that lists all the subjects that will be planned in sequence, and then the parent involvement policy as well, which is KB, parent involvement. So just a first reading if anyone has questions, we can discuss it at the next board meeting.
Beth, did you have a question? Beth is sitting there like that. I don't know if she's, I got disconnected again.
I said no.
No?
Okay.
No
Okay.
question.
No question.
No question. Item 9, discussion of change in regulation from ASBA.
Mr. President, members of the board, this regulation has to do with cloth face coverings. There are 3 for you to read, one for staff, one for student, and one for visitors. They're all very similar. We've received a couple iterations from Arizona School Board Association. The first one was rather strict. I did share the Google Share Sheet with all of you to compare Executive Order 2020-51 from Governor Ducey, the CDC guidelines for face coverings, the City of Kingman's mandate, and then the ASBA example, and between all of those to ensure we're compliant and following the intent of the executive order and the mandates. We submitted Gbgb regulations. So basically for face coverings, and this would be for adults and students and visitors, all persons including but not limited to staff, students, vendors, visitors, and volunteers shall wear a cloth face covering or approved face shield while on any district property, in any district facility, at any district event, or while on any KUSD bus. Preschoolers or visitors under 2 do not have to wear a cloth face covering. Anyone who has trouble breathing, anyone who is unconscious, incapacitated, or otherwise unable to remove the mask without assistance. Those are all stated in the executive order and in the CDC guidelines. The superintendent may make exception to the requirement to wear a cloth face covering while keeping in mind the health and safety of everyone. I did add the exception for the reason that even myself sitting here trying to read all of these statements, you do a lot of talking and you start needing some air. So we did add some exceptions, but under the strictest of health and safety. And that would be to wear a mask. Exception to wearing a mask may be made when working alone in a room, in small groups, which would be under 10 according to our Return to Learn manual, where social distancing is possible, which is 6 feet apart, or outside. Frequent hand washing and sanitation are still required on a regularly touched surfaces must be disinfected between use per CDC recommendations. So because it's a regulation, it doesn't need a board vote. It's not a policy, it's a regulation. But if you do want to discuss it as a governing board, ask me questions or give me directions, I'm happy to hear what anyone has to say. And then it repeats for the students, and Governor Ducey in his mandate did explicitly say that we do need to give students breaks. That would include outside on recess and of course while eating. Yeah, it was interesting that ASBA, the first one they sent out was quite strict. It was anyone, anywhere, inside and out. And it did say the superintendent could make exceptions. And then the second one ASBA sent almost identically matched the one we wrote. So that was a little validating.
Gretchen, I have a question. Can you hear me?
And now.
Hello. So my question is, what are the consequences for not following the guidelines? So you're caught with, a mask under your chin because you're maliciously compliant. But what are the consequences, and are they formal? Are they written?
Well, there'd be I'm echoing. Am I okay this way now? Okay. Yeah, that would follow our HR protocol. Now that it's a regulation, and we've shared the expectation with staff. Usually the first round, you monitor for compliance, any regulation. You'll have a conversation, you'll remind them what they need to do. That would be the supervisor on site's responsibility to talk to his or her staff about being compliant. And then if it continues, we would follow our protocol. We have a level of summary of conference, letter of direction, those kinds of things. I really would hate to have to do that, but we need to build a culture of safety and professional courtesy in following these regulations. And so Ms. Shumway, to succinctly answer your question, we'll follow our HR protocol when we have non-compliance.
So because this issue unfortunately is politically charged, is there a way for people to report people that are not complying anonymously?
Well, we don't have, they usually, people typically go through HR because that's a confidential office. That would be my first answer. I was going to see what Ms. Woolsey wanted to say, but we don't have like an anonymous Dropbox or anything, no.
So if they don't feel comfortable going to their site supervisor, they could go to HR for
Yes.
some anonymity? Okay, thank you.
Ms. Mareski and her team, that's part of the obligation of that office, is to be a safe environment for which to report anything that you feel fearful about in the workplace without repercussion that it's being passed on to a peer or whoever's involved in the conversation or the situation.
I have a question.
Yes.
My concern is that it seems restrictive in that it says cloth face coverings. I like that. I mean, that's the only thing I'm talking about is that the technicality of that. I'm assuming we are making the assumption that people are going to understand that a medical surgical mask or a K95 mask are also okay.
Yeah. If you read the CDC guidelines, which we refer to in our Return to Learn manual, you will see that cloth face coverings are not considered personal protective equipment. Technically, they are allowed and approved face shields, but they do not replace an N95 or a medical face covering. So obviously something more protective would certainly be allowed.
Okay,
we are supplying, as you know, we purchased 4 face masks and a lanyard for every student and every adult. So nothing is cost prohibitive to families or to staff members.
Yeah, I just was concerned that we needed to have something to make that statement so that people didn't think they had to have a cloth one if they only had the KN95 or whatever.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Beth.
Yep.
I have a question. What can we do with children or staff who have a medical problem that they can't wear a mask?
Yes, we've already had that situation. If there's a medical problem where they can't wear a mask, and you'll see in the suggested policy where we say, I think it's in the mandate, where individuals who cannot, due to medical reasons, can have an approved, like a face shield or some other form, but there'll still be a form of protection.
What sort of documentation?
So we've had a couple of staff members that have asked that question. So we did research it. We talked with the state, we talked with our legal office, and we can make that accommodation. Any staff member or any student who needs an accommodation just needs to speak with either our office or their school office, and we'll work with them to make sure they're safe, and so are the people around them. It's so weird to look in the computer, then up, then in the audience.
Any other questions for Dr. Coleman? I just wanted a clarification. So a group of 12 students and socially distant 6 feet away.
You're muted, Charlie.
No, they're in a group larger than 10. Our Return to Learn manual says any group over 10, or if you're in a small space and you cannot be adequately separated.
Okay. Any other questions on item 9?
Okay, we will move on to item 10, approve Fourth Amendment to IJ between Western Arizona Career Technical Education, KUSD, for provision of career technological education courses from July 1, 2020 through June 30th, 2021. Oh, Aaron's on virtual.
Mr. President, do you guys hear me?
Yes.
This isn't something that I brought forth, but as I understand it, this is what allows us to keep offering waive JTED classes through our district. And I think this isn't an annual agreement, but outside of that, I don't really know what this agreement was for. That's what I'm assuming. I didn't bring it.
Sorry, Aaron, I'll add to it. So it's an intergovernmental agreement, he's right, with the Western Arizona Career Technical Education WAVE that says that the duration of our agreement with Amy West is the superintendent you're aware of. Kingman Unified and WAVE, they do fund part of our CTE programs at the high school level. So for example, we have, ag and autos and culinary. This is the agreement that they will fund some of our programs, and in return, we'll have teachers and programs and follow all the criteria of the WAVE programs during the course of a year. So this just extends it from July 1, 2020 through June 30, 2021. We'll keep offering CTE WAVE classes.
Thank you. You have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve.
We have a motion.
Did you not? I made a motion to approve.
Yes. We just need a second.
I'll second. Second.
Second by Mrs. Young. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
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 Any against? Okay, motion passes 5-0. Oh, you want the mute off?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I can hear you.
I know that everybody else.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay, we'll move on to item 11. Approved KHS culinary program and student store to continue using the Aspen cooperative contract for food and supply purchases.
Mr. President, members of the board, we went into this agreement several years ago when we still had when we were running our own food service. It made purchasing of food rather easy, but it makes it easy for those two groups as well. So even though we've moved to a third-party company, we'd like to keep the Aspen cooperative available for the student store and the culinary. That's where they'll get their best prices and the quickest product. Does everybody hear me?
Thank you, Mr. Sherman. Any questions or a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve.
I'll second.
We have a motion and second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Item 12. Select delegate and alternate for ASBA Assembly in October 2020. Who's taking this? Is it Beth? Mrs. Weiser, want to discuss this since you're our director?
I have been a delegate before, and I would be happy to be delegate again. I would ask if, I don't know if Bruce wants to be delegate again, an alternate. Jen has not been to any of these, and I don't think we're not even going to have this in person. I don't think.
No, I'm fine with doing alternative.
She, did you hear Beth? Oh, okay. Jen, did you want to be an alternate?
Yep.
She would do it. Do you want to do it, Bruce, or are you okay if Jen does it? Because it's going to be on the computer. So, okay. Okay, so Beth, would you like, I'll make the motion that Mrs. Weiser be our delegate and Ms. Shumway our alternate for the ASBA Assembly in October 2020.
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Young. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Item 13, approve 2021 district representatives who will participate in special education individual plans.
Mr. President, members of the board, this is a housekeeping item to add the names listed as LEA representatives when we hold IEP meetings with special education students and their families.
Any questions for Dr. Dorner or a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Did you get those, Star? Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Item 14, approve safe to return criteria based on AZDHS recommendations. It's Dr. Dorner.
There we go. I would like to begin the evening by thanking parents, staff, and community members who took the time to write a letter, call, or come this evening to share a perspective. I appreciate the opportunity to work together in the best interest of our youth. Every voice should be heard, and all perspectives should be considered. The hard part is knowing that it's impossible to encompass every perspective. While opinions may differ and emotions are heightened, it is important to remember that everyone is fighting for the same thing, a safe return to school and learning. Safe for some means working or learning in an environment without fear of contracting the COVID virus. For others, safe is defined as a place kids can spend their day in a supportive learning environment, free from stress and distraction, and with their peers and teachers. Some stakeholders feel that returning to in-person instruction is irresponsible and unsafe for all involved. Others feel the irresponsible decision is to keep students at home while offering virtual learning. Fear drives both sides. Both sides love and care about the kids, and both sides want what is best for them. But fear is at the heart of all of it, that we're making the wrong decision. This is a tough spot to be in. How should this decision be made, Mr. President and members of the board? What factors should be considered in this unprecedented conversation about opening schools and returning to normal? How does one decide who should come to work and who can stay at home? How do you ask educators to wait until a few days before the first day of school to hear a final decision on the safe return criteria? And that is, I want everyone to know that is no fault of our board or our community. We have been riding a roller coaster. We received the criteria late last Thursday. It's not been the intention of the governing board to wait until the last minute. We've been waiting for the data, the numbers. And in the meantime, our courageous teachers and our courageous staff have prepared for any number of outcomes regarding Monday, August 17th, which is next Monday. Our teachers are ready for virtual learning. They've spent the entire summer. Our teachers are ready for in-person learning. They've been ready since the day they signed their first contract, and yet we wait. So this is a big night. There's a lot of people waiting for what's going to happen. As far as my recommendation or our team's recommendation to the board, I have to tell you that part of my heart and part of my head says, let's get them all back on campus now. All of my heart says that, and part of my head. The time has come. The rest of me says we must consider all available factors and make an informed decision. So tonight I will share the return to learn criteria as we received from the AZDHS, county COVID data, how that might compare with the little information we get about the city data, some of our teacher survey information, and results from our phone calls to families. So I'm going to share my screen. And hopefully, I need to get to this. Should I go here first? I'm used to having two screens. So the presentation behind it. This one? This one? Okay. Okay, so you all, we're doing this so you can see what they're seeing. First of all, I just want to very briefly go over what we received on August 7th. This is the AZDHS Safe to Return Criteria announcement. There are 3 categories: a minimal community spread, moderate community spread, and substantial community spread. So clearly, we want all green. That is, we get to go back to school, all the kids, things are basically back to normal following hand washing, sanitizing, some social distancing, and safe precautions. A moderate is there's sustained transmission, there's a likelihood or confirmed exposures, can't be in communal settings, there's a potential for rapid increase in cases, and then obviously the substantial is large scale, controlled community transmission. I gotta get myself out of the screen. Including communal settings like schools and workplaces. The criteria translates as follows. As far as the cases, the 3 criteria that we have to meet. The first one is cases. We need 2 weeks below 100 cases per 100,000, which would put us in the yellow or the moderate. Obviously, if we wanted green, we would need below 10. That's a pretty significant difference. So the percent positivity then is 2 weeks with percent positivity below 7%. That's kind of a mid of the moderate range. Still has you in the moderate range or the yellow. If you wanted to be in the green, you need less than 5%. The third would be COVID-like illnesses. We need 2 weeks with hospital visits due to COVID-like illnesses below 10%. On the right of the color-coded chart, you will see Mojave County. And I do have data on future slides of those of you that are like, wait, it's lower in Kingman. The current population as of 2019 for Mojave County is approximately 212,000. It's kind of heading up toward 213,000. We currently have 22.7 average daily rate when I calculate between July 27th and August 10th, kind of the last 2 weeks. That's 13 days actually. So you can see we're clearly in the moderate range, which isn't bad, and we're on the low end of the moderate range. We're heading down toward the bottom third versus the middle or upper third. The calculation that I got off of the state site today, and I talked to the Mojave County Health Department, who confirmed it, is a 10.9% for Mojave County as far as percent positivity from all reporting county labs. So those would be the labs at Bullhead Urgent Care, Lake Havasu Hospital, Kingman Regional Hospital, Sonora, all of the labs, we use the term aggregated or together, give us that 10.9%. That does put us in the red. The good news is that it's just barely in the red. And everyone I spoke to today, including some representatives from Kingman Regional, are telling us that this is really coming down, that part of the reason this is up is because you take the average of multiple months. If we were to just look at August, we're starting to look pretty good. And then the best number we have is the 3.9% of hospital visits folks are presenting with COVID-like symptoms. So that's sort of the big picture of where we sit. As you can see, we have a green, a red, and a yellow. So we aren't, we're not racing across any finish line here saying that we are good to go and there's a green light to have all of our kids back on campus, even if that's something that we are truly desiring. And I'll keep going. There's layers to this information. The next thing we need to look at when we're making an informed decision is if you have a green light or a yellow light or a red light, what does that mean as far as what's being recommended by the health professionals in association with returning to school? If all of your numbers are green, hand hygiene, enhanced cleaning or disinfection, proper ventilation and monitoring student and staff illnesses is the best way to go. That's what we were really hoping for last spring when we thought this might be a temporary situation. We're not all green, so that's really not an option as far as recommendations from professionals at this time. The middle column, if you are more of a minimal to moderate, the suggestion is a hybrid. And you can see our Return to Learn guide that we wrote and published in June covers all of these criteria. We have, hygiene and respiratory etiquette. We have COVID custodians planned to be on every campus. We don't have proper ventilation on all campuses. I cannot give us a big X on that. Our schools were built in the time frame when windows were no longer something you had in classrooms. So we're working with our facilities department on that. Filters have been cleaned. We're ordering air purifiers in some situation, but that's a tough one. We're continue to monitor absenteeism. We have plans in every school. We have screening teams. We have thermometers. We have criteria for our screening. Physical distancing, not possible, not with our class sizes. I cannot guarantee kids will be 6 feet apart in any situation on any campus. Cloth face coverings we've purchased. As Ms. Shumway mentioned, that's something that we really have to work on as a school community. You guys all get an A+ in here this evening. I gotta tell you, it's not easy, right? And so imagine teachers and students, we have 700 to 800 kids on any campus trying to keep those masks on. We got to build that community and that practice and that procedure, but we're up for the challenge. Cohorting is trying to keep small groups together instead of having like high school or middle school kids travel through schools. Some campuses are having cohorting. That's a pretty difficult process for a middle school or high school, especially when they all have 6 classes apiece and you have teachers that teach a specific subject. So if you can't do cohorting, you have to have some alternate plan. You might have staggered releases, at the bell time or different things to help meet that criteria. We've already added to our return to learn guide. Field trips and large gatherings are not allowed. And communal spaces are closed, as in there won't be like big awards assemblies. Those things would have to either be done in small groups or virtually. The one communal space that would remain open would be the cafeteria. While some people, are saying teachers could eat with their kids and recess with their kids. If you've ever walked in those shoes where it's sun up to sundown, you got to build in a break for adults. So we have talked about our cafeteria procedures where we stagger it. We have more than one kiosk for kids to come through. The lunches are all prepackaged. So every time there's a criteria presented for us, if we can't fully meet that criteria, we find another way to meet that criteria. So that's the yellow. And then finally, the red. If you have any of your criteria in the red, the recommendation is virtual learning with none of the other indicators present. And that's pretty big, right? Everybody there is the green, a hybrid situation with the yellow, and students not on campus with the red. You will notice that it says right there in the little blue, on-site support services. So we'll talk about that also in a minute. So I put the same numbers that I had on the last slide just to remind everybody what they are. The narrative for this slide is based on declining number of cases over a 2-week period. Mojave County is in the low moderate range. Based on the percent positivity from all reporting labs in the county, Mojave County is slightly above the moderate range. The county does not report city numbers. However, KRMC does report a 6.2 positivity rate. That was as of today. And then if you take out some of the areas that they are servicing as far as testing, there's sort of a range from I think it's a mid 4 to a 6.2 from KRMC. Now I just have to be transparent because I was the assessment director here at the district a number of years back. So I know as well as anyone, you can use data to tell pretty much any story you want. So I want to be careful and mindful that I'm giving you all the data and not just data that is my data driving us to a certain direction. So that's why I say, yes, we're 10.9% at the county, and that's what the AZDHS is asking us to use as county data, 10.9. But it's important to also recognize that we are at a 6.2 or even lower in the Kingman area. And then finally, the 3.9% hospital visits, and this came straight from my conversation with the health department and representatives from local hospitals, is that we do have a low presentation rate of COVID symptoms right now.
Dr. Dormer, are you okay if board members ask questions?
Oh yeah, jump on in.
I think Mrs. Young has.
Go ahead, Mrs. Young. I can't see, all I see is this now, so I need you to tell me when someone wants to speak.
Just a question on the cases, the 22.7 average daily rate of cases. Now, is that people who tested positive or people who actually had the virus?
Well,
Because
that's a
I
good
know people who,
question. I would think
Well,
tested
I know-
positive means you have the virus. I have a hospital person
Well-
here. Can you answer that? Who said they worked at Kingman Regional? Oh,
I'm not gonna report you as positive unless you have tested positive, which would mean that you are.
you were carrying the virus. Okay. So it sounds like,
the
Carol,
reason,
if you test positive, then you are carrying the virus. You may or may not, your symptoms may present in a variety of levels, but you definitely have the virus.
okay, because I know a couple people who tested positive and then they were tested again and it was negative. So
I see what you're saying.
I just asked
So it was a
that.
false positive?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know what the margin of error is. Any data set has a margin of error, and they did not give us, I didn't see the margin of error on the AZDHS site that I was using for my information, but I could certainly ask that question.
Okay,
So margin of error for anybody that's curious is, it has to do with that false positive or even a false negative. You could go either direction. What's the usually testers or labs like to have at least a 5% margin of error where you could say these numbers are accurate or correct within plus or minus 5%. So I don't know, Carol, but good question.
I may make one comment. In the last month and a half, I've been tested 3 times, 3 different ways. I've been negative every time. Just different tests, what have you.
I don't want to ask personal questions, but can I? May I?
Yeah.
Why were you tested?
Well, first time I had to be tested is when we flew to Alaska. We had to be tested 72 hours before we arrived in Alaska. We got there, and I did it through the hospital. And I was concerned about having a piece of paper telling me, you know, not just go up there and say, hey, so I had the proof. And they told me that 5 days later, while I was there, I didn't have to be quarantined, but 5 days I had to be tested again. So this time it wasn't the full, it was just the lower part of the nose. No, the first time they tickled me, you know. Anyway, then they wanted to test me again before I left, but it was 14 days. There's no reason to test because I'm leaving that day. Then I had a procedure at the hospital Monday, the 27th. So I had to drive over to the hospital across Airway and on the new one over there. Anyway, you drive through the hospital, the ambulance area, whatever, and they just did a saliva test. But I had to have that before I went to the hospital to have a procedure done. So they've pretty well, you know, checked me out to make sure, because I've done a lot of traveling, you know, and all kinds of things. But just followed guidelines and just, my wife and I haven't had any problems, so we're very thankful for that. Yeah.
So just to add to the data to give a full picture.
You're muted, Gretchen.
Mute. I did it. Thanks. So there are teacher survey data results too, and I'll tell you what I was looking for in surveying the teachers is their confidence level in teaching virtually, in teaching in person, and then how they felt about teaching with some students on campus. So you can see that 95% of the surveyed teachers fall in the range of highly confident to somewhat confident when thinking of teaching virtually on campus. That 15, those are raw numbers, obviously not percents. 15 of our staff members overall are not comfortable being on campus teaching virtually. We do have a number of teachers who would prefer to have the option of teaching virtually from home. Right now, our requirement is to be on campus. The second set of data is the teaching in person, when the kids were the green lane, if you will. And you can see how dramatically that changes. When asked about teaching in person or how confident they felt about having kids there in person, it does decrease from 95 to 68. I'm combining the first three because I think highly confident to somewhat confident is sort of a good range. If you're not confident at all, that's pretty important information. And then what does it look like, confidence levels, when there are some students on campus? And that's the on-site support that we talked about. I mentioned this in the last board meeting, that Executive Order 2020-51 that says learning should start no later than August 17th, whether it's virtual or in person. Should also include an option for all families who need a place for their students to go. So even if any school in the district or in the state, I mean, that is offering virtual is also offering students a place to be. So there is no purely virtual form of instruction. It all kind of leans toward a hybrid.
Dr. Dorner, can Ms. Shumway ask you a question?
Yes, Ms. Shumway.
I was just letting her know she was muted.
I'm muted again?
No.
Okay. Who muted me? I untouched it. Do I need to repeat any of that, or did the narrative speak for itself?
You're good.
Yeah, this says to plug in immediately, just so you know. Or no, I'll do it later. Restart tonight. Okay. The second set of questions, just briefly, I asked a lot more than this. I just selected some of the questions that would help you tonight in this decision. Whoops. Talks about class sizes. And our teachers have always had, we are staffed at, because of budgetary reasons, and the state has gone through many years, up until the last couple of years, of reductions in budgets. Our staffing is anywhere from 34 to 1 at a high school level to, I think, 28 at a kindergarten level, which is still high, 28 kindergartners. And even then, sometimes our class sizes are higher than that. We've had such a growth in Kingman that last year we've had kindergarten classes with 30 to 35 kiddos in it. That's huge. And then first grade and second grade. And it seems like it would be easy to say, just add a staff member, but every 10 staff members is like $1 million, and you don't just get another $1 million. So class size has been a problem before the pandemic. Now we're in a pandemic, and one of our goals was to reduce class sizes by offering online instruction. And I'll talk about the numbers in online in a minute, but you can see from the teachers survey that 124 out of the 309 teachers that answered the survey said class size is a concern. They have no confidence in the class size and then being able to keep things safe. Another thing that we really want to pay attention to is that professional courtesy environment when it comes to wearing the masks, sanitizing, making sure that we are not spreading germs and viruses around our campus. So we asked the stakeholders, what's your confidence in, oh, sorry for the spelling error on that, your peers following the procedures? More than half the staff members are somewhat or not confident that all stakeholders, peers and students, will follow safety procedures consistently. And that's a message to me that I need to continue to work on, making sure we're all doing this together. I put this question in here about building relationships online because we've had a lot of conversations about that. It is difficult to build relationships with kiddos online. You really need them in your room so they have those collaborative peer relationships, that student-teacher relationship, that environment of learning, not only academically, but socially, emotionally. So I wanted to know how teachers were feeling about being able to reproduce that online or in a virtual setting. 52% of staff are somewhat or not confident about building relationships online. So again, that's something, if we do go virtually, that our team will have to be really careful and mindful about, is helping teachers and families do that. The parent call, we called all of our families in the last 7 to 10 days to ask them a few questions. We wanted to make sure we know there's a very big difference between online and virtual, and there's been some confusion in the community and among our parents. We use the term online sort of globally. Whenever we think a computer is involved, we tend to say online. For Kingman Unified School District and what we're offering families, when we say online, we only mean Kingman Online Learning Academy. If you choose online, your curriculum, you're self-paced, you're at home, you're on the computer, there's no transition to in-person. That means you don't want to be in the school for safety or other reasons. You're going to be kind of a self-contained school within a school online. Virtual means you're using a computer from your home until safe to return. Virtual means kind of like what we're doing now with Jen and Shelley and Beth, not in the building, but fully participating in what's happening. That's a virtual. So there's interactions and conversations, and there can be learning with the teacher, teacher-led, with the kiddos. We call it synchronously. So it'll be partially synchronous, where they're together with their teacher, and partially independent, where they're doing their assignments. So we called all of our households to find out which they preferred, virtual until safe to return or online. And you can see of the families that we were able to get a hold of, 16.5% were interested in online. We were expecting about 400 kids. When we were imagining and putting this all on the drawing board last May, maybe 400 families from our preliminary survey, but we are at 913 in our Kingman Online Learning Academy. That is massive. We're excited about doing this, but we didn't add staff for this. We have all the same staff that are trying to do this and trying to do the virtual at the same time. 58%, 3,206 indicate they would participate virtual until safe to return. When we asked, do you have a place to work virtually? Do you need a place on campus? Only 6% said they needed a place to work. That very much surprised us. I expected it to be 20, 30, 40, 50% of the respondents said, yeah, we would like our student on campus. But then you can see 26% or 1,413 didn't answer or return the message. They didn't answer the phone call, or when they received the message, didn't call us back. So we're wrapping around and calling them again. There were only across all 10 campuses about 60 to 80 households we couldn't get a hold of at all. But of that 26%, if they don't answer this call, we're going to try an email. We're going to try every other avenue because we need to know. I think some of them might be waiting for tonight. I'm not sure. And then 100% of our special education students are received or are receiving a call this week from their case manager. So here's here's where we're at. Like what would we recommend? If we look back at the green, the yellow, and the red indicator lines, and what we need to do as a school district in order to provide the recommended strategies by the health professionals, we have 3 options in my mind. The first one is virtual with on-site support for students who need a place to work. That was voted at our last board meeting. At last board meeting, we also said we knew that there was going to be a press conference on July 23rd. There was. Governor Ducey said on July 23rd, on August 7th, we'll give you the criteria, right? We wait for the 23rd. We're all so excited. The press conference happens. It's like, wait again, August 7th. We wait till August 7th. We get the criteria. And then we knew on August 11th, we would discuss that criteria and whether or not we met it. And if we wanted to continue with the virtual, or if our board and our community felt like we were safe to return. So that second one then is in-person learning when safe to return based on the criteria. So we can open virtually with on-site support for families that need it. We can open in person when safe to return, or we can consider a hybrid phased-in approach based on safe to return moderate criteria, which we've discussed in prior slides. To me, and this is tough because I want to jump to that green one. But based on our data and the conversation that you all want to have about the data, I think we need to go ahead with virtual with on-site support. I want to support families that need to be at school, but I want to support teachers with their movement toward virtual learning, but at a shortened time span. To me, what I'm presenting here is kind of encompasses as much as you can everyone's needs. So if we have virtual with on-site support until Labor Day, then we can reduce class sizes with an AB teacher-led in-person schedule until the first week of break. And again, remembering that anyone who needs support or needs to be there can. And then by then, all of the criteria should be solidly in the meets range where we go everybody teacher-led in person. In all three of the stages of my recommendation, there's an opportunity for kids to be on campus and to interact with teachers. There's teachers and site staff, but there's also an opportunity for teachers to phase in. We can solidify all of those criteria that were in that yellow bar, get it done right, watch the numbers, celebrate when there are no transmission cases, like we've done with Little Explorers. Our Little Explorers preschool daycare was open from March until now. They've had no cases. The Club for Youth has been open from March until now. They've had no cases. So there's some indicators pointing to some really good data. Schools will have the, you can read, I don't have to read it to you. We do have some testing centers showing lower numbers, but starting virtually gives everyone the opportunity to engage in the process, and those who need a place to work an opportunity to be on campus. It supports staff and families. Schools will have an opportunity to practice and build the safe habits among all stakeholders. And I know I've heard this from people. You've had all summer. You've had since last spring. What have you been doing? Well, we haven't had this. We haven't been to the first day of school. We haven't had people coming on our campuses. And then another bonus is students will receive a higher level of support in smaller classes during a phased-in small group AB approach. That's just one option. I'm trying to show you how we can be creative and get kids on campus and be safe and pay attention to the numbers all at one time. So I'll take any questions at this time.
When you say virtual with on-site support, so you have kids who feel like they can't learn at home or they're not in a safe environment.
Yes.
So they have an opportunity to be at school.
Yes.
What does that?
What does that look like? So are they in a classroom and let's say they're a second grader? Are they in the classroom with their second grade teacher, or where is the teacher at, or their?
We can't hear your response, Gretchen. You're going to have to unmute.
That's something we've been talking about with teachers about too. It's hard to ask somebody to be an online teacher, a virtual teacher, all at the same time. So we're going to utilize the whole staff. We'll utilize the whole staff in different ways. So it looks different at elementary and middle and high school, and each principal has been given the task of developing their system on how they'll interact with the kids and where the kids will be. And so I can't answer you as a district overall, but each school has a plan.
So some of the letters
we're not going to just bring kids in and ignore them. No.
Right. So some of the letters we heard from parents, we both work 8 to 5 jobs. I have nowhere for my second grader to go. So that second grader actually can go to school. They can be picked up by a bus. They can be at school from whatever their bell times are, and they just won't necessarily be with their teacher at the school. They'll be in a socially spaced room, and they may be with their teacher at some points during the day. And they're there with a laptop in front of them. Mm-hmm.
Gretchen, can you unmute?
Watch the numbers, get kids into school as they need it, support families who can be virtual at home. I have a room full of witnesses.
Okay. Bruce, did you have any questions yet, or do you want me to check on Jen? Or?
Well, Cyril, Of course, I wasn't here for the last meeting and everything, but all the stuff I've gone through and reading up on the last meeting and sitting in tonight and listening to all the comments, I'm concerned that to go back to school at the present time is a little too early yet. I pretty much in favor of the virtual until we see what's happening state-wise even though I know Kingman's a whole lot smaller and everything else, but we still have a big problem with it nation-wise or whatever, and I honestly believe that it's, will get better. It isn't going to go away, but I think even though we don't have much of it here, I just think we should start with the virtual and take it to a certain period that, I don't know if it's a semester, quarter, or break, or just how it works at different times, but I think we need just a little bit of figuring out just how this virtual is going to work and see how we progress from it and everything else. And then if everything looks good and we're not having any problems and it works, then we'll go back to school. We get the kids back in there with the teacher and what have you. And I know that's so important, but yet I don't think it's as bad as even the rest of the county, like Bullhead or Havasu or whatever. I think Kingman's a little more unique, but yet I still think it's a little too soon to just put them back in school right off the bat, as far as permanent, with the teachers. So I do like the idea of the virtual to get started with, and then come to a point where, hey, it's going to be okay. That's my feeling. That's where I'm at.
So you're in favor of Dr. Dorner's suggestion of the virtual with on-site support till September 7th, and then going to the AV teacher-led in-person schedule starting on September 8th?
Yeah, at least. Mm-hmm. I am in support of that, yes.
Okay. Jen or Beth or Carol, do you have any comments? I keep forgetting.
I'm ready to make a comment.
Okay, Beth, go ahead.
One of the things that's been brought up, not in this meeting, but in other meetings this week, is with the county, with the health department, and with what other schools are looking at, what happens when people are vacationing on Labor Day. And we won't see, the lag time would give almost 3 to 4 weeks before we could see the test results in the statistics. That could mean that we go ahead and have our students in class, and according to the guidelines, we would have to shut down again. So I'm a little concerned about going to the AB hybrid right away in October. I like the gradual starting virtual and then going to the hybrid model before we go to full in class learning. But I am concerned about going to the AB hybrid model so soon after Labor Day.
Thank you, Beth. Jen, did you want to add any comments? Or Carol?
Well, of course, I want the kids in school as soon as possible, but I also look at the safety and health factors. I questioned the case studies because there's always an error factor. But I do believe that I want to take the recommendation from Dr. Dorner, because I think going virtual first and then renewing it in September is my recommendation.
Thank you, Carol. Ms. Shumway?
Yeah, I think there's I have a list. So just on that point, I think it's odd that we waited for data-driven criterion to lead how and when we take our next steps, and yet we fall back into that calendar mode where we're saying, okay, September 8th, we're back. I think that we need to continue to monitor the people that have all the data have been working hard to make it very clear with color-coded check marks and big old red X's of when we're good. And to start saying, okay, good, we've waited till August 7th to have actual data criteria, and then we start throwing calendar numbers back up there. What were we waiting for if we were going to do that in the first place? So I think we need to be continuing to monitor that. That said, I do like the stepped approach to going back. It is going to take some time to really get into virtual learning mode. And if we are calendar-based versus data-based, that looks like we're going to be spending a majority of our time initially getting our procedures in place for virtual learning, just to throw us back into some sort of hybrid model. And then you spend several weeks teaching those procedures. We now have a community that has to shift, where they may have really just gotten into figuring out what life looks like at home with virtual, and they were like, okay, now here's a new model, and because it's September 8th, we're going to do it because we said so on August 11th. So that is my thinking. I think we need to continue to monitor the data and not the calendar. And then from there, I think we've had several teachers write letters, even at the call to the public, saying we need a significant chunk of time for continuity of learning, and that is huge. You ask any educator, that's huge. So if we provided or said, okay, no matter what is happening, if our community is getting it together, we are going to follow guidelines on social distancing and masking. Our community can do that. Then by the end of the quarter, we are good to go if the data reflects that. So I would like to see quarter-based chunking with the expectation that we are still monitoring data to abort the mission to go back to in-person if at the first quarter Labor Day happened, because Arizona did not see the numbers that we currently have until what? Memorial Day, right? So we should be able to learn from our mistakes, and knowing the sociology aspect of it, we know we're going to have an uptick. Is it going to be a huge uptick? Who knows? We don't know, right? That's why we're going to follow the data. So on that is my recommendation. I've got other things to say when we're ready.
Go ahead, Dr. Dorner.
Thanks to all the board members. Yep, I'm always been a data-driven person. So Jen, just to respond to why it kind of looks like we're shifting from data to dates, is because I'm listening to staff members. I agree with you that we need chunks of time, but our staff members, when we said we'll just monitor it and see, that's created a huge level of anxiety. So that's why I kind of put in the phased approach and added some dates, because people are kind of craving an anchor. So it needs to be a hybrid of data data and an anchor. So, I mean, I like what you're saying about like a quarter is an anchor, because that's also calendar driven if you think about it. Quarter is an anchor. September 7th is an anchor, and we kind of have to do that while keeping in mind that the data needs to drive the decision. So I agree with many things that you just said, Ms. Shumway. I just wanted to explain why I was sort of attaching calendar to it. And I've said in every meeting, our goal is to get kids back on campus, and we don't want to do it prematurely. And I will tell you that the Mojave County Health Department, when I was in a conversation with them today, they did talk about beaches opening, Labor Day coming, and schools opening. But it's funny how schools opening are going to drive it. And so part of me wonders, and this is new to all of us, so I really appreciate this honest, open dialogue. Part of me wonders if schools opening is part of what's going to drive it. If we keep postponing that, we're just postponing the inevitable. So that kind of entered my thinking too. We're straight from the Mojave County Health Department. Schools opening will cause the numbers to go up, so let's not open. But at some point when we do open, they are going to go up. So it's tough. It's not easy, and that's just one recommendation. It's the board's decision, and I would like to say that whatever we decide, families need to know, teachers need to know. We gotta do this. It's time to go. That's what I want.
And
Whatever it is that we do.
the other thing too, just to throw out there, we open up on the 17th. And then Labor Day comes and we're off a few days or whatever. I don't know how much, but yet they get to go maybe on some vacations or out of town or different things like that. How important would that be? So when they come back, I mean, you'd really have to test them quite a bit. And how long, when she mentioned the quarter, how long is the quarter? Well, okay. I was just
October 8th when we leave for fall break.
We mentioned, what you said, and I kind of went along with the September 7th or whatever, but I'm a little concerned about, starting up just 3 weeks or so before Labor Day, and then taking the different chances of people being everywhere, and all kinds of things and bringing it back to school. But, and there again, here we go about talking about, keep putting it off. And yeah, we have to make a decision to get something done, get something started. But
I have a comment.
And the virtual is, like I said, I'm very much in favor of that. It might be just a little too soon though. Like early September, to put the kids back in school. We might want a little bit more time for some more data, especially after a holiday. That's just my thought.
Well, I think with Bruce saying that we have to look at the data that we do, I think we're making a mistake if we look at the Mojave County data.
Yeah,
I think
right.
we use it as a reference. I think we have good data that we've received from our local hospital. And if you look at those numbers, we almost meet all the criteria with the COVID-like illness. I think our county number is at 3.8%, correct? On that, somewhere in there. The percent positivity, if you look at the data from the hospital for people tested in Kingman and you drill it down, it's under 5%. If you look at the amount of cases, we're almost in that minimal category. So as of today, our numbers are just about there. And I think that's what we have to look at, because this is a community-based decision. I don't want to base our decision based on the entire county, because there's a lot of other factors that take place. I honestly would feel safe and be in support of our students starting on August 17th. It doesn't sound like the rest of the board is with that, and that's why we're a great board, because we can talk and look at everyone's thoughts and try to make the best decision. But like Dr. Dorner said, our teachers are ready for whatever the board decides, and I'm confident in that. But we have to get our kids back in school. We have to let them develop socially, educationally. We need to give an opportunity for equal access to education for everyone, for all the students in the community. And we will work as hard as we can doing that virtually, but I'm not confident if it meets it at 100% for equal access for everyone. So if we do decide to go virtually for a couple weeks, I just think we need to make sure as a district that all the parents know that it doesn't mean your kids have to sit at home in front of a computer. There's still an opportunity for them to be picked up at the bus to come to school and to learn at school, even though it may not be with their teacher for the full amount of the day, but they will be in a safe place. And I think that needs to be a point that's well driven for everyone. But I would be in support of starting school on August 17th. If the rest of the board is not, I'm also confident in our superintendent. I know she looks at these numbers 24/7, and I appreciate her recommendation. And I am okay with that also, with her recommendation. So I will make the first motion to accept Dr. Dorner's recommendation to start virtually with online support from August 17th through September 7th, and then go to an AB teacher-led in-person schedule from September 8th to October 8th, and then move to teacher-led in-person October 19th through the end of the year. Pardon?
Second.
I had asked to
I'll
make a
second.
comment.
Yes.
Is this open for discussion?
Yes.
Or is it just the board that can discuss it? Okay.
No,
No.
I do, I agree. Our sister community, Kingman Academy, had a board meeting this morning, and they voted virtual until further notice, I think is how it went, which, yeah, I don't like, and I love my Kingman Academy people, but I think our teachers kind of want that date-driven piece, but at the same time, I think we should add in there that if there's some sudden change in the data, then we have to take that into consideration.
Can I ask a question?
I don't want to be back and forth for our teachers in any stretch. That's one of the things they've asked of me. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that. I just want to be very careful that we're not
Yes, I agree with
changing
that,
lanes a
Dr.
lot.
Dorner.
So, that's my final comment.
Are we
May I
still
ask a
discussing?
question?
You have made a motion?
So we have a motion, but I don't have a second yet.
Well, I will.
I second it.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second by Mr. Ricca. Now we'll have discussion on the motion. Any discussion?
Oh, yeah.
Who is
So
that? Ms. Weiser? Oh, Ms. Shumway.
I think that it's interesting, more frustrating, that we sat around making really detailed plans of what to do. And that return to learn guide is very specific, which is wonderful because it lays a framework that we need. And then we said, well, wait, we want data, right? So the entire state health department put together this data, right? Beautiful dashboard. And then it didn't look the way people wanted it to look. So then we want to say, well, wait, but Kingman looks different. So we say we want data. We don't like that data. What if we pare it down to just this data? But all of the board members are getting the emails from parents. And what they didn't realize is they were providing more information for this argument. They work in Bullhead. They work in Laughlin. To say that our community is Kingman is discounting many of our families that live in Golden Valley, that work in Bullhead. Our Mount Tipton school that live in Dolan, that work in Vegas. I think we cannot pick and choose data because it makes it look the way we want it to look. Our community is diverse. It includes reservations. It includes Native Americans. It includes impoverished students. Yes, and that's why that opportunity to come to school is there. But I don't think that we should be picking and choosing data and using it in a way that makes us feel better. I think the state health department put together this data that we were waiting on with bated breath for a very long time. And to dismiss that because we have our own argument, I think is really a detriment to the community itself. So that's my discussion on this. I have a couple other questions, but on this motion, I am not in favor of a calendar-based reset to a hybrid model, and I am not in favor of this motion.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Shumway. Do we have any other discussion? Ms. Young, Mrs. Young?
Yes. Listening to everybody, you know, it's very confusing to the community and the staff and even myself on how we're doing this. But looking at the data that the school district did in contacting parents, majority of the parents want their kids back in school as soon as possible. And I think we should base a lot of it on what our parents feel and how safe they feel with sending their kids back to school. The kids have been out all summer. They've been on vacations. They've had contact with all kinds of people, and if they were going to get it, they've got it. That being said, over the Labor Day weekend is just a couple of days compared to the whole summer, 1 week's vacation or 2 weeks vacation. And I am comfortable with your motion.
Ms. Weiser, did you have any comments? Oh, Dr. Dorner has a comment.
Yeah, I wish it would, if it was easy to go back. I guess my heart, my enthusiasm and my passion for this district, I want people to know I'm not picking and choosing data. I so appreciate you, Jen. That's why I love having you in these discussions, because you bring critical thinking to it and ask good questions. So thank you for that. But very transparent. I have the Mojave County data in there. I didn't skew it with Kingman data, and that's why my recommendation is to begin virtually. You know, adding dates to it can be confusing, but to me, if you say a quarter or a semester, all of that is the same thing. But my decision was really based on the story and the narrative that I showed in the slides presentation, that we do have really good numbers in the hospital presenting COVID-like illnesses. We are in the moderate range in the first category. The 2 of the 3 qualify us. And then the third one, we're really on the low end. So my decision wasn't necessarily based just on the fact that Kingman is telling us lower numbers. It's on a range of 10 to 100. We're at a 10.9, and we've had weeks of a downward trend. And so my data mind sees that and says, we're already good in the 2 with a downward trend. The third one, we have gone from, where were we, 24% or something a few weeks ago, down to a 10.9. The trend seems to be heading in that direction. So to me, giving it another 3 weeks, 4 weeks, or whatever the board decides, just allows us then to move into that range, which statistically, it looks like will happen based on the data, based on the trends, based on where we were and where we are now. We can fairly confidently predict, although this pandemic and this corona has made me feel like I can't always do that we are going to be 3 for 3. So that's where, I just want it to be clear, that's where my decision is coming from. Not because I'm trying to use Kingman to get us in the door. I hate it when all of the switching of lanes. I think I kind of came to peace today when I read the data, I put the narrative together, I saw the downward trends. The only part I struggle with in my recommendation, and I'm always transparent, in my own recommendation, I do struggle a little bit with teachers are really been working hard and getting ready, and they're prepared to go a quarter or a semester. And I think Jen or Beth, maybe it was Beth, said, it's not fair to staff to have to be driving down this highway and then somehow get onto another highway and to another highway. But well over half, if you look at the staff data, are kind of anxious to get the kids back too. So all of that put together is the basis for my recommendation, but I respect every board member's opinion, every letter writer's opinion, and there are certainly plenty on both sides. So I'm done talking and y'all can make a decision.
And Dr. Dorner, you have been really good at presenting both sides, and I think that's really important for the board to really put all this together. I would support a motion that went with a chunk with the expectation that, or the caveat that this could change if we do not have 3 check marks on that dashboard for Mojave County. That would be the motion that I would be in favor of. There's criteria on that I feel are missing, because if you think, and words really do matter. So when I hear people say we need to get back to school, we are going back to school August 17th. So we need to be clear that when we say going back to school, that language is heard by our kiddos, and they need to know that, and it's not you, Gretchen. It's been said by other people tonight. We are going back to school, and virtual, our teachers have been working really hard to make the first day as special this year as it always has been. As a matter of fact, we are going to have 20-year-olds in 25 years talking about their first day of school at 2020. So I think that we are going to do a really good job, but we need to make sure that we're clear that we are going back to school. We are going back to learning August 17th, but what that looks like is different. But I think we do need to be data-driven, and I will support a motion that has that information in there. If you wanted to attach dates for security, that makes sense. But knowing that we're not going to throw our teachers and staff into a bad situation, that we're always looking out for their health and safety. So that will always be part of it. So that's where I'm at.
Thank you, Ms. Shumway. Is Ms. Weiser with us? I have a text that she's out of the Zoom right now. Beth, are you there?
She's out.
I have some comments from Beth that I can read. She wants to vote no. She wants the hybrid model to wait until the second quarter if the data supports it at that time. Should we wait a few minutes to see if we can get Beth back on?
Is she in the waiting room?
Mm-hmm.
Gretchen, I have some questions for you if while we're waiting for Beth, and it is related to this topic. If we have a situation where someone tests positive, are we letting our staff, teachers know?
Yeah, we can't break FERPA in education, HIPAA in medical.
Well, we're not
and
going to
give
tell
any
them
names
who,
or any
right?
identifying information, but we will definitely, part of the contact tracing that HR would handle, it's kind of a combination with Mojave County Health. Mojave County Health is responsible for contact tracing with anybody that tests positive. But as a school district HR department, we have the right to inform anyone they may have been in contact with that we won't say who, but that there was a contact or a close contact situation.
And what is the requirement?
Same thing with students.
What is the requirement then for them if they've been in contact with somebody that's tested positive? What does that look like for a teacher, for example?
Well, it's really interesting, Jen, and I've studied this quite a bit because there's a really big difference between contact. Like, let's say in this room right now, somebody in the back row tomorrow tests positive. I cannot say I was in contact with them. The criteria is in close contact, but I'll say this for the benefit of everyone. Close contact within 6 feet for 15 minutes or an extended period of time, or there was hugging and hand holding and high-fiving or whatever. Then
so school setting.
the recommendation is to watch for symptoms and then perhaps get a test and do quarantine. But just because somebody's in the building doesn't mean there's contact. So if I'm a teacher in a primary hall and someone out in the courtyard has it and we weren't really around each other, it doesn't count. So we'll take it case by case, and we'll be very mindful to talk to the person. We don't want to ignore them. That's why we're doing screening and symptoms, but we also don't want to, every time someone is in the world that has passed by somebody, everybody quarantines, there's never going to be anybody anywhere.
Sure. Are we providing free tests to teachers and staff?
We don't have access. I do have a call in. I should have asked Mojave County representative today when I was on the phone with her, but we don't have the tests or access to the tests right now.
Are we,
Beth was in a meeting yesterday. I wish she were able to get on because she might be able to answer
you'll be
this.
able to answer that. Okay, I'll hold off on that. You said ventilation is an issue. What is the timeline of correcting that? Because I think that is a big deal when
It is.
about a timeline of coming back to hybrid.
I think correcting it is a difficult question to answer because we really, like Wallapai School where you taught and I taught, for example, you can't correct it in a sense that they're not going to have open windows. There's not going to be sort of ventilation through air, but I know our new facilities manager, Mr. Catron, had his team going around to schools, making sure filters are clean and all of, we even talked about, and Vicky's not here right now, but maybe Jerry remembers, ordering filters that have a different capturing mechanism in them, HEPA filters. And so that's happening right now, Jen. And then if a teacher feels like he or she is more vulnerable, or there's a reason that we need to put, a freestanding HEPA,
Air
I
filter?
don't have the right language. You know what I'm talking about, the air purifier in the room, that we are talking with staff who have requested that to make that happen.
Okay. And what about, well, while we're teaching virtually?
You can go ahead and speak now.
So we still waiting for my comment then?
Yes, if you want to comment on the motion.
Able to say that, yes, we are following the AZ DHS guidelines, waiting for data after the first quarter to go into hybrid is the way I feel. So that may have sounded a little convoluted. I don't want to say right now that we can go into the hybrid model on the second 9 weeks. I want to say that we will go into the hybrid model on the second quarter in October, after we have, as long as the data says, yes, we can do that, so that we give time for everybody to settle in, and those who are, students who are in definite need of being on campus, we have that ability. But just to be err on the side of caution, we don't plan to come in for hybrid model until October, is the way I feel about it.
Okay, thank you, Beth.
We have a motion on the floor in a second. Do we need to vote on it now, or do you want to amend it? I can't hear you.
Is there any further discussion on the motion? So again, to repeat, the motion is to start with virtual with online support as recommended by Dr. Dorner from August 17th through September 7th. And then from September 8th through October 8th, move to an AB teacher-led in-person schedule. And on October 19th through the end of the school year, teacher-led in-person. So we'll take a roll call vote, and I'll start. I vote yes, and we'll go across the board. Ms. Shumway.
No.
Ms. Shumway votes no. Ms. Young?
Yes.
Ms. Young votes yes. Ms. Weiser, Mrs. Weiser.
No.
Ms. Weiser votes no. Mr. Ricca.
Yes.
Mr. Ricco votes yes, so the motion passes 3-2. Okay, we'll move on to the next item, which is item 15, which is to approve our donations. So do we have a Mr. Ricca makes a motion to approve? Yes.
Yeah, I made the motion.
We have a second by Ms. Weiser. Any discussion? Thank you to all of our donors. We appreciate it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0, and I'll entertain a motion to
I can make that motion.
motion by Mr. Ricca. Second by
I'll second.
by Mrs. Weiser. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes. We are adjourned. Thank you.